like do the same thing, like stay calm and just make sure I get to the hospital.
The streets are going crazy over new footage of NBA YoungBoy. In the video, he is seen slapping Lil Tim during a live performance after a fan threw something onto the stage. Yes, that Lil Tim. The same one inextricably linked to the circumstances of King Von's demise. Everyone is talking crazy right now, wondering if YoungBoy just snapped in the heat of the moment, or whether he actually looked at the individual who had been referred to as his shooter on tape. It didn't take long for havoc to erupt on the internet once the video became viral. The usual indicators of a viral moment were all present: security moving through the throng, shaky phone footage, and background chanting. NBA YoungBoy stood motionless and appeared uninterested in games in the midst of all that chaos. Viewers then claimed to have seen it. It was obvious that YB was reaching out and slapping Lil Tim. It wasn't just anybody either. Kondo Rondo's inner circle views Lil Tim as a hero, while supporters of King Von see him as the antagonist of a whole era. The comments started coming in as soon as the video was posted. "There's no way YB just checked his own shooter" was one of the things people typed. Others attempted to defuse the situation by labeling it as staged, altered, or phony. But the people participating made this occasion much more impactful. Someone associated with one of the most notorious incidents in the history of contemporary hip-hop. Anyone who truly follows this street plot will see that it goes beyond random energy, despite the internet's attempts to claim it was karma. The people began asking a question that no one had anticipated would come up again for the first time in many years. What is actually going on between Lil Tim and NBA YoungBoy? This wasn't simply a smack, assuming the video is authentic. It was a clear indication of who was actually in charge in that room. YoungBoy was making it very evident that he now controls the plot, regardless of who pulled the bullet in Atlanta. And that's precisely why the whole thing blew up so quickly. The conflict between King Von's legacy and YoungBoy's camp had been brewing even before this alleged slap video appeared online. Everyone was previously aware of the commotion in 2020 that resulted in King Von's death, a moment that permanently altered hip-hop and elevated Lil Tim's profile beyond anyone's expectations. That evening transformed Lil Tim from Chicago supporters turned a little-known person into someone who infuriated them. In his own perspective, everything that transpired was nothing more than terror, uncertainty, and instinctive survival. He described it as if everything had happened in a single, rapid haze. Gunfire erupted everywhere, followed by yelling, fists flying, and people fleeing.
Pull out and you shoot 4 times. Yeah, the gun down.
He was struck twice, once in the behind and once in the hip. He also said that he maintained his composure while bleeding.
Like, do the same thing, like stay calm and just make sure I get to the hospital.
After Van's death, there was a long period of silence until NBA YoungBoy spoke up, and that same composed demeanor would influence how people perceived him in the future. At that point, YB was confined to his own personal struggles and refused to give in to the demands of the music business. What first set YoungBoy apart was his unwavering self-assurance that he could move whatever he pleased. A large machine behind him was never necessary for him and never pleaded for acceptance, never pursued love in the industry. However, people immediately noted a change in him when he was eventually freed. He wasn't just acting irrationally. He appeared to be well prepared to take back control on his own terms, having carefully considered every move, threat, and alliance. Everything he did was much more forceful after that change, and it caused situations like this latest video to send shockwaves through society. Each and every bar, disc, and YoungBoy's little post began to feel as though it contained a message etched in stone, as though he was speaking directly from the front lines. Fans quickly realized that this wasn't just another music release when he and Quando Rondo released their collaborative tape, 3,800 Degrees. This was payback wrapped in bass and 808 seconds. In one song, Quando essentially made the night van that killed him into a memorial. By doing this, he elevated Lil Tim to the status of a street legend. However, something much darker was going on behind the scenes while the music was upending the culture. According to reports that quickly gained traction, YoungBoy initially had no intention of releasing that project. Lil Tim stated unequivocally in his Vlad TV interview that Woe had to persuade him since YoungBoy wanted to wait, possibly even distance himself from the whole matter.
He ain't wanted to say, I don't know like 100% everything, but I know he wasn't saying like he didn't want to just drop the tape, like I don't want to drop this with you. He was saying like, let's wait.
And now that this additional footage has been released, hearing that has a completely different impact. During one of the most contentious rap feuds, YoungBoy smacked the same person who helped solidify his reputation. Everyone stopped at that point and began to ask questions. What was altered? Social media is revolving around that, moving more quickly than a DJ at a block party in Baton Rouge rotating between songs. Online users claim that YoungBoy finally lost patience, that YB felt surrounded by all of Van's subtle and overt images, particularly those from Lil Durk, and everything got personal as soon as that paranoia set in. And keep in mind that it wasn't just a random tantrum when YoungBoy went live yelling. He was signaling to everyone that he was not going to back down from anything by planting a flag. Lil Durk instantly responded with a line of his own. You'll never slide if your friends die. It doesn't add up. That one bar ignited the flames once more and pushed the entire internet into a frenzy. People now believe that the entire plot has completely changed as a result of this purported slap footage. Imagine now how the entire event appears from the outside. Durk's rhymes are constantly poking the young youngsters seated at the top of the game. Online fans are treating the past as a warped scoreboard. Lil Tim, the man who is said to have started the entire storm, is standing directly beside him. It appears to be allegiance to outsiders. It's as if YB is standing next to someone who was involved in one of the major shifts in contemporary rap music. However, to someone like YoungBoy, who established his reputation for power, domination, and untouchability, loyalty might quickly appear to be a liability. The purported slap follows. There was no altercation. It wasn't anarchy. It wasn't even very loud. The manner in which YoungBoy moved was what convinced viewers that the video was authentic. Calm, icy, and in control, like a team member being checked without uttering a word. There was only one abrupt move that seemed to convey an entire sentence. No shouting, no crazy gestures. Remember who maintains your status. Thousands of people immediately linked it to previous statements made by YoungBoy. His prior remarks about staying out of jail, his desire to avoid drama, and his need to maintain complete control. That is YoungBoy's outrageous paradox. Although he surrounds himself with warriors, he laments about being alone. Although he claims he doesn't rock the industry, whatever he releases has a profound impact on it. Every action he does seems to be planned to change the atmosphere, yet he acts like he doesn't give a damn about what people think. Therefore, if this video is authentic, it wasn't an isolated incident. It was a cue, being sketched in front of everyone. Lil Tim may have been necessary for YoungBoy back in 2020. In 2025, however, the roles are clearly reversed. YoungBoy is much more needed by Lil Tim. The story is even revealed in Lil Tim's Vlad TV interview. He recounted their initial exchange following their bonding out, and it seemed like YB was composed, encouraging, and devoted.
Saying like the same thing everybody else saying, like, don't worry about it, what the industry's saying, bro, you ain't did nothing wrong.
However, his enthusiasm shifted as the years went by, and the cameras continued to focus on a little child. On top of hardship, loss, and survival, the same young guy who once preached allegiance became a man who constructed an entire throne. And everyone is aware of one thing in their hearts. When violence is the foundation of an empire, that same force inevitably reappears. It seems like one of those full circle moments, that supposed smack incident, the kind that reveals gaps between individuals who were previously tightly confined. It may have been the first time the public saw a change that had been developing for years. This whole thing initially appears to be just another crazy moment from a rapper who lives in the thick of chaos. However, it feels far deeper to those who have been following this narrative from King Von's last moments to the 3,800-degree era to this release clip, rather than a spontaneous explosion. Because there is always a hierarchy behind every popular video, it feels like a message. Furthermore, hierarchy is the only thing that maintains order in YoungBoy's environment. The small boy from those early 38 infant days is no longer the same. This young child has been imprisoned, betrayed by those he trusted, slapped with cases, and had to bury friends before their time. He discovered the hard way that being feared is far more powerful than being liked in this world, and he's finally accepting that persona like a crown, after years of the internet portraying him as the antagonist of hip-hop. YoungBoy perceives this as discipline, order, and a reminder of who is in charge, even though the streets may view it as blatant disrespect. Because of this video has a greater impact than any diss tune or subliminal lyrics. Because there must be a change taking place behind the scenes if the same man who supported you when everyone called you a murderer now checks you in front of thousands of people. Additionally, the internet never stops when devotion begins to erode. The rumors don't either. Every YouTube reaction page and TikTok X sees the video like ravenous vultures as soon as it was leaked. Screenshots were all over the place. People focused on the video, dissecting it frame by frame as if they were deciphering a historical enigma. However, beneath all of that boisterous banter, there was one topic that no one wanted to ask about too carelessly. Did NBA YoungBoy actually examine his own shooter? The streets can't ignore that because, if it's true, it completely upends the system. For many years, Lil Tim was viewed as the devoted soldier who endured all the hardships to keep the young boy circle intact. When it got dark, he was the one who remained upright. The person whose actions transformed a skirmish in the parking lot into something that permanently altered rap. However, the boss's public inspection of the soldier conveys a message more powerful than any words, even if it is merely symbolic and only takes a few seconds. It indicates a recent shift in the allegiance line. The streets may sense that something more significant may be developing behind the scenes since the hierarchy has recently tightened. Let's take a quick look back, even if no one knows exactly what will happen next. Lil Tim wasn't merely keeping quiet following the death of King Von. He was actually getting better. Detectives had questioned him. He had been shot twice, and he was placed in one of the most contentious legal circumstances that hip-hop has ever encountered.
Like, some folks giving me my flowers, or some folks showing respect.
And additionally, Quando Rondo and YoungBoy ended up standing in front of him when he was out on bond, protecting him from the ensuing storm. Tim described how hearing his name reverberate through music became an amazing experience in his Vlad TV interview. He claimed that it made him feel respected, and up until the release of this new video, that word meant the world to him, because it appeared as though he might have lost the respect he thought he had won. In all honesty, the suspense had been growing long before the video was leaked. Industry insiders had been speculating that YoungBoy had been distancing himself from the entire 3,800 Degrees era even before this point. Tim claims that YB wasn't the one advocating for the initiative. It was Quando. Additionally, that didn't sound cautious to fans who were paying attention. It sounded hesitant. Hesitancy quickly gives way to distrust in rap politics. According to some admirers, YoungBoy felt trapped by the Von scenario and didn't want to revisit anything related to it. Dirk was no longer the only one sending subliminals. Every record, every song, and every Instagram live moment became something that authorities could take a screenshot of and store. Police, labels, and blogs were all keeping an eye on this. The manager of the 100K song King Van discussed the aftermath following YoungBoy's release of Bring the Hook, claiming that the culture was losing its spirit as a result of the genuine ramifications. And when you consider how much suffering this entire plot has already caused and how much money certain people made off of the mayhem, that remark becomes even more painful. This is the bit that keeps going back, though. YoungBoy is someone who enjoys being in charge. His entire basis is based on that. He must be in charge of the ship, selecting the moment, establishing the mood, and selecting his allies. And the whole dynamic is altered when someone, even inadvertently, threatens that control. Because of Lil Tim's circumstances and the date of this release video, the whole issue seems far more complex than a moment captured on stage. Reminding everyone around him that nothing moves until he wants it to, it seems like YoungBoy is reclaiming his place. The way YoungBoy speaks these days conveys everything. The way he looks straight, the tone, and the stare. He seems to be challenging the entire world by staring at the camera. "I'm dropping a tape at 12, he declared. He didn't make an announcement. It sounded like an order from him. His whole empire is based on two things that every rapper either loses attempting to hold on to or dies trying to defend: respect and fear. Therefore, even if he touched Lil Tim lightly on stage, it wasn't out of rage. It was a commercial matter. YoungBoy was silently alerting everyone in his immediate vicinity that no one in his social circle, not even those who have previously moved for him, is above being checked. The internet instantaneously divided in two as soon as the video appeared on social media. YoungBoy crossed the line, according to one side, and you should never treat the man who stood by your people in a real-life street incident disrespectfully. According to the opposing side, YB had been carrying too much weight and needed to tighten his circle before things got nasty. Thus, the move was long overdue. Some even called it a power reset, as if YoungBoy was severing any weak points before they could bring him down. Because this is the truth. Lil Tim is unpredictable due to the same street code that once made him desirable. Someone who has demonstrated that he will act first and consider afterwards cannot be completely controlled. A person who was hit twice, stared death in the face, and didn't fold at all cannot be boxed in. And small boy, he has seen enough betrayals in his life to understand how quickly loyalty can become leverage in the wrong hands. Every little change in his circle is significant because of this. Concurrently, Quando Rondo's name began to reappear in discussions. He is the link between the two men, Lil Tim's brother-in-arms and YoungBoy's apprentice, and it's a risky position. When two individuals connected to one of the most explosive moments in rap, fans saw that Quando became silent as soon as it appeared that they might be drifting apart. No comments supporting YoungBoy, no posts defending Tim, no interviews attempting to explain the clip, nothing. Furthermore, silence is never just silent in this game. It makes a strong statement. It can indicate fear at times. It may indicate strategy at times. Additionally, occasionally it indicates that the truth is far too complicated to be resolved with a straightforward justification. The consequences, according to some with knowledge of the matter, did not begin with the released video. Long ago, it had been bubbling. The tour that was meant to unite YoungBoy Quando and Lil Tim never took place after the 3,800 Degrees rollout. Additionally, Tim carefully considered every word he used when responding to the interviewer's question about whether the tension was genuine or the result of trolls. His statement, "I probably wasn't going to be able to go," may have been the tipping point. Because everything changes when there is a lot of tour money at stake, and one crew member is unable to move freely.
I wasn't even really supposed to be on tour, but I know I was on house arrest, so I was like, damn, I know I'm probably not going to be able to go.
All of a sudden, YoungBoy is not considering brotherhood or loyalty. He is considering profit, optics, and liability. YoungBoy's career appeared to be in better shape by the beginning of 2025. Lawfully, at least. He had returned to streaming services. He was being pushed more than ever by his label. And for some reason, he had turned into a living contradiction. Despite being the most contentious rapper alive, he was nevertheless able to attract family-friendly YouTube views. Most artists would never be able to achieve that kind of influence. Lil Tim, meanwhile, was becoming less noticeable. Nothing to retain his name in the public eye, no new interviews, no musical features, just quiet. Then, all of a sudden, this video goes viral online, and the man who people had begun to forget suddenly finds his way back into the news, but not in a good way. Social media investigators immediately launched an investigation as soon as the video appeared. Every pixel, including the small boy's posture and the chain Lil Tim was wearing, was being examined. Some claimed it appeared more like a tap and insisted it wasn't a slap at all. On the cheek, perhaps even a lighthearted gesture that the internet misrepresented. Others were certain that there was genuine friction, especially in light of YoungBoy's tendency to sever relationships quickly when someone crosses the line. One thing is certain: if you've watched YoungBoy for a sufficient amount of time, he doesn't switch things around at random. It's survival. He defends his reign and prevents his universe from falling with every change in his circle, every quiet moment, and every icy look into the camera. YoungBoy has severed ties with his former family members, day ones, and blood relatives. Therefore, it wouldn't be shocking if YB reminded Lil Tim, who signs the checks, if he even slightly deviated from the rules. What comes next is the true question at hand, because this video feels more like the spark before something significant happens than it does like a random occurrence. YoungBoy's current lyrics seem different, as fans have already noticed. Distance, chilly detachment, and less street warfare. It seems as though he is weary of bearing the drama of others, and it might be the end of an era if this was truly about power. A significant portion of contemporary street rap was influenced by the secret breakup of the YoungBoy Never Broke Again, Quando Rondo, and Lil Tim trio. Because, let's face it, a boss is signaling a change rather than merely displaying power when he publicly checks someone who once stood in the fire with him. And changes like that are seldom subtle in hip-hop. Fans are observing. The business community is observing. Lil Durk is undoubtedly grinning to himself someplace, because the one thing he was never able to do from the outside, breaking YB's inner circle, may have simply occurred internally. Everything changes quickly when authority turns into paranoia. Everything began as a blur. A hand abruptly whips across the camera, followed by shaky phone footage, muffled sounds, and people moving around. Nobody was able to identify what they were witnessing at first. However, when the camera stabilized for that brief, secondly, the picture was quite clear. NBA YoungBoy was standing in a packed studio corridor, gazing at Lil Tim, the same man the world associates with King Von's demise, when all of the internet froze in one smooth, quick motion. YB seemed to slap him across the face as he raised his hand. It didn't matter that the clip was only a few seconds long, blurry, distorted, and of poor quality. It was plenty to ignite everything. It was all over the place in an hour. Memes, breakdowns, reaction channels, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and more. The headlines began to blow up. Young boy examines the gunman. Little Tim is humbled by his own camp. YB recently unlocked his own empire. Suddenly, a single, small segment of video rekindled the culture. This one moment turned the room upside down and pulled everyone back into the flames in a world already divided by allegiance, tragedy, pride, and old scars. The leaked video may have appeared to onlookers to be nothing more than a brief altercation, a moment you forget as you scroll by. However, anyone who is familiar with these men's past will see that slap as the culmination of years of conflict, alliances, and suppressed feelings. YoungBoy wasn't merely observing another rapper. The man who changed hip-hop forever the night he pulled the trigger outside an Atlanta hooker lounge was being checked by YoungBoy. The whole rap world was turned upside down on the 6th of November 2020, the night King Von was assassinated. The game was split right down the middle as a result of that one moment. On one side, Van's legacy was being carried like a war banner by Lil Durk and OTF. Conversely, there was NBA YoungBoy, Quando Rondo, and Lil Tim, the man at the heart of it all. Tim claims that the evening quickly became out of control. Gunfire replaced fists. Off-duty officers retaliated. The entire block was engulfed in mayhem as people ran everywhere. Tim was struck twice. He was once clean through his ass and once in the hip, but he persevered, bonded, and quickly rose to prominence as one of the most divisive figures in contemporary rap. He was a protector to some. He was a villain to others. However, one thing was undeniable. That night in Atlanta would always be associated with Lil Tim's name. Let's go on to 2022. NBA YoungBoy emerges from prison sharper, colder, and more determined than before. He had changed into a version of himself that the industry had never seen before due to months of seclusion. Calm, self-assured, and certain that dread was more valuable than any cosign or contract. His partnership with Quando, Rondo, and the 3,800 Degrees Project was made possible by this way of thinking. A tape that was more akin to a silent triumph lap for overcoming every challenge the industry streets presented. Here's the twist, though. At first, YoungBoy didn't even want to let go of that cassette. Little Tim. According to Tim, YoungBoy tried to hold back and possibly even disassociate himself from the associated energy, but Quando was the one pressing for the release. And now that the new video has surfaced, that detail strikes in a whole other way. It raises the question of whether the fissures in their circle began to appear long before anyone became aware of them. Because this moment may have been years in the making if YB had reservations at the time. That hesitancy was crucial. Hesitancy is more than just prudence in this game. People interpret it as doubt, and doubt quickly gives way to mistrust. Insiders claim behind closed doors that YoungBoy didn't want to rekindle the King Von rivalry since it would make him appear guilty by association. Others claimed he was simply being astute by allowing the legal issues to be resolved before anyone put additional fuel to the tale. Whatever the reality, Quando persisted, and YoungBoy allowed the project to proceed, but not before resentment began to fester beneath the surface. Fans could hear 3,800 degrees throughout the song when it eventually dropped. The steely defiance, the cutting tone, the paranoia, and even the weariness seeping through the bars. Lil Tim still received his shout-outs, his poem, and his acknowledgement. However, you could tell Young even then, the boy's thoughts were changing. He no longer regarded Tim as a brother. He was staring at him as if he were a risk that could destroy everything he had worked so hard to build. This new footage feels like the final chapter of a story that has been simmering for years because of this. There is no shouting or mob disorder in the video. It didn't appear to. Suffering. It appeared to be a position. Only someone like YoungBoy would dare to make a move like that, which essentially proclaimed, "I built you." YoungBoy's entire business has been based on control since he was a teenager. He desires more than loyalty. He anticipates compliance. Here's the issue, though. Lil Tim isn't made to bow his head. This is a man who has already faced death, taken gunshots, persevered through turmoil, and left unflinching. Someone who has faced danger head-on and survived cannot be intimidated. Suddenly, All those earlier quotes and interview footage had an entirely different impact because of the initial exchange. After Tim bonded out, the relationship between YoungBoy and Lil Tim was serene, almost encouraging, as if they were still tightly attached. However, that intensity seems a lifetime ago now. Additionally, this moment demonstrates the extent to which things have changed behind the scenes. YoungBoy was a mentor back then, steady, calm, and leading. However, this new footage's spirit wasn't that of a mentor. That was a tyrant establishing regulations. The internet didn't take long to go crazy with it. People's feeds were overflowing with TikTok modifications. Discussions on Twitter began dissecting each frame as if it were evidence from a crime scene. All of a sudden, everyone had a different account of what transpired. Half of the admirers reported that the scene appeared innocuous, almost lighthearted, as if the video was being edited for clicks. The other half claimed to have witnessed genuine tension, citing YoungBoy's demeanor, his look, and Tim's lack of response. But in all honesty, perception turned into reality. Thus, the specifics were no longer important. Even a rumor has the power to destroy alliances, destroy friendships, or even change the course of a story in rap. Accusations swiftly followed speculation. According to several bloggers, YoungBoy was fed up with Tim's name being associated with the Vaughn incident and felt that it was dragging him into unwelcome controversy. Others asserted that Tim was attempting to set himself apart, possibly even going it alone and creating his own path. During the interview, he acknowledged it himself. Then came the money rumors, with people discussing loyalty checks and delayed payouts. In actuality, no one knows. But that didn't stop the internet from pretending to know everything. Then King Van's previous manager, 100K Track, had his old Vlad TV interview become viral once more, the video in which he discussed the never-ending cycle of hurt, disappointment, and losses. These remarks now seem like a warning that the entire society disregarded. Nobody wins in these wars, he declared. Lil Durk's supporters came out swinging, laughing, and clowning, claiming that the moment was poetic justice. They even recalled Durk's famous statement, "Your homies die, you'll never slide." They simply take turns losing in front of the entire world, ripping open all the old wounds between F and Never Broke Again fans. And every thread, meme, and repost reinforced that line. For Durk's side of the culture, this was more than just drama. It was a moment that reversed the power dynamic they had been battling for years. However, for those who genuinely comprehend YoungBoy's mindset, the entire situation made perfect sense, because YB has always been fixated on dominance in his music, his persona, his personal life, and every space he enters. Even when he said that about Vaughn and Bring the Hook, he wasn't talking to someone who was no longer here. Rather, he was warning everyone who is still here. This is how WB communicates, not with explanations or apologies, but with actions that cause discomfort for the entire culture. Therefore, if this footage is authentic, it's not really about betrayal. It's about control, because in a culture that values chaos and controversy, remaining silent means being erased. YoungBoy is currently refusing to fade away, not even for a moment, but that kind of unrelenting dominance comes with a price: isolation. He's cut off collaborators, sacked producers, canceled shows, and vanished for weeks at a time without notice. Some refer to this as brilliance, while others term it paranoia. Those close to him have reported that he hardly sleeps and spends entire nights pacing, recording, and thinking 5 steps ahead. In any case, that's what happens when survival stops being a phase and becomes a way of life. Lil Tim, on the other hand, has been living in the background. He hasn't had any significant features or interviews since his Vlad TV moment, and there hasn't been much activity on the internet. When 3,800 Degrees dropped, fans thought he would finally take off, but instead, his momentum hit. When this so-called smack leaked, it felt like a full circle moment. The storyline finally met the ending that people sensed was coming. The same man who stepped up in the name of loyalty. Every time his name came up, one question shut everything down. Is he the artist or the killer? That's the kind of question that no PR team on earth can fix. It now appeared as though he was being checked for it, and some insiders say that's precisely why the video leaked. They say it wasn't an accident, but rather a calculated move from YoungBoy's camp to remind everyone of who is in charge in the room. If that's accurate, it could be one of the coldest, most calculated power plays hip-hop has seen in a long time. A public humiliation masquerading as dominance. The relationship between those two will never look the same again. Even if it wasn't staged and was just a raw moment captured on camera, Once your boss checks you in front of millions of people, there's no turning back, not in the streets, not in the music game, and not anywhere power rules the room. And the aftermath from this moment might get really unpleasant very quickly. Rumor has it that those close to Lil Tim are furious. Their pride has been damaged, their trust has been shattered, and behind the scenes, there is quiet talk about leaving the YoungBoy's camp because they aren't brave enough to confront YB head on. But the resentment is there, simmering, waiting, refusing to go away, and pride never goes away quietly. Meanwhile, Quando Rondo, the person torn between the two sides, has become utterly silent. No tweets, no interviews, nothing but cryptic posts about people switching up and loyalty being fake, which is loud for someone who once referred to Tim and YoungBoy as brothers. It's the sound of someone realizing that once power is involved, brotherhood is meaningless. Even the tour that was meant to unite them never took place. And Tim gave a very cautious response when asked if the tension was due to trolling or something else. Perhaps that response wasn't just about legal restrictions. Symbolic. Perhaps even at that time, he was aware that he would not be a part of YB's next move, next era, or next chapter. For YoungBoy, this chapter is all about legacy. After years of being called the industry's villain, he made the decision to embrace it. He's not trying to fit in. He's trying to outlast everyone. There's something awful about it too, because YoungBoy continues repeating this pattern. Every empire he builds eventually burns from the inside out. If that means severing ties with the individuals who previously stepped in front of danger for him, then so be it. It's not stunning because of what it depicts, but more because it indicates that Lil Durk has never been YoungBoy's greatest adversary. Perhaps that's the true tale behind this footage. Trust, betrayal, silence, dominance, same screenplay, new actors. It's never been the industry. It's never been King Van's legacy. It's always been YoungBoy versus YoungBoy, the struggle between the person he wants to be and the person the streets made him into. Every slap, every disc, every feud. It all comes down to the same thing, YoungBoy fighting the ghost of his own paranoia. The irony is that, despite being surrounded by cameras, money, streams, and fame, YB still acts like someone trapped in survival mode, guarded, cold, constantly watching, and never letting anyone get too close. In an attempt to control everything around him, he ends up isolating himself even more. The same mindset that keeps him alive is also tearing his world apart piece by piece. Because once you allow someone to get close to you, they have the ability to harm you, and that's a chance he's done taking forever. Fans continue to debate whether the video was authentic or not. But in all honesty, it doesn't matter anymore because in hip-hop, perception becomes reality. People believe that the bond between YoungBoy and Lil Tim, which had endured years of chaos, has finally broken. Durk is probably grinning somewhere in Chicago, not because he wants to exact revenge, but rather because time did what bullets couldn't. It divided the opposition from the inside out. What people believe ends up being more powerful than the truth itself. YoungBoy, on the other hand, will continue as usual. He will enter the booth, record another raw song, post another cryptic message online, and let everyone debate it while he transforms suffering into content like only he can. However, no matter how many new songs he releases, he will never be able to surpass that split-second clip, the moment that reopened every wound from the previous 5 years. This story, which is about what happens when fear becomes the basis of loyalty, when power comes before brotherhood, and when respect stops being earned and starts to be taken, is the ideal metaphor for YoungBoy's entire career because it is brilliant, brutal, and self-destructive all at once. Whether this leak tape was produced, real, exaggerated, or misinterpreted, one thing is clear. Respect derives from domination, not love. Loyalty is not a relationship but a contract, and like all alliances before it, it is torn apart when it ceases to serve him. Obvious. YoungBoy Quando, Lil Tim, and the trio that once defined a movement could never share a stage, a picture, or even a room once more. Perhaps YB wants it that way, because he believes that there can only be one ruler, and thrones are not shared by kings.